News Radio 560 WVOC. Good afternoon. Welcome back into our program, hour 2 of this edition of the Afternoon Drive. Great calls in that first hour, and we'll tackle a bunch more of them in just a little while. But I want to get to the hotline because we want to talk with our 3rd District United States Congressman Gresham Barrett, who joins us live from D.C. And Congressman, good afternoon, and how you doing?
I'm doing great, Kevin. I'm at the airport headed home, so today's a good day.
Yeah, it's always nice. Well, we got beautiful weather waiting for you when you get home, Congressman. So
good.
Don't bring us any weather, and don't bring us any attitude from D.C., and don't bring us anything from D.C. except you, because you know what? I can't stand that place, except for I love the tourism aspect, but I don't like the politics.
Well, I'm going to tell you something, my friend. I have seen a change over the last 2 months in Washington that I've never seen in my entire time in politics. So there's too many people up here that believe government is the answer, that higher debt, higher taxation, more borrowing is the way to pull us out of these economic times. And you know as well as I do, it's less taxes, it's less spending, and it's empowering people to pull themselves up.
I really believe that there's a certain level of acceptance that people like you, Congressman, people like me, many of the people, if not the overwhelming majority of talk radio listeners around this country need to come to terms with. And that is, I think that all of us have been wearing blinders for a little while. And what I mean by that, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree, I think we're wearing blinders in that you know it, I know it, our listeners get it also, but the majority of Americans are not on the same pages as you are. They are for a bigger government right now. The majority of Americans voted for this, knew they were getting someone to babysit them, and want that. And it makes me sick, but I really think that I've been in denial in thinking that this is how common sense people think, and there's no common sense here.
No, absolutely not. I mean, when you just take a look at the current budget that the president has proposed. It's a $3.7 trillion, a 9% increase over last time. When you think about the tax increases for just the $250,000 and up that the president has talked about, that's 52% of the small businesses in South Carolina, Kev. But even more so than that, even more insidious, when we talk about this cap and trade or capping where our carbon footprint is right now, and then trading these, it's a $679 billion additional tax increase to the American families, and that is a conservative estimate. That the proposals in the president's budget are more stringent than what I've seen in the past. It could go as high as another $2 trillion tax increase on South Carolina families.
It's very scary what's going on. Let me ask you this, Congressman, and I don't bring you on here to just bash on President Obama. That's not fair to the president. He's not here to defend himself, but it's also not my intention. I'm one of those people who I have very high hopes for our country. I have very low expectations for this administration right now, but I still pray for President Obama, and I still pray for Mrs. Obama, and I hope to God that they are guided and they do the right things. But I can't help right now but to do a little bashing because, well, I see us spending so much time on let's do this spending package, let's do that, let's go on a witch hunt on this AIG, let's do this, let's do that, and I don't see a president paying any attention to what Russia's doing or to Iran or to North Korea or Cuba or a lot of other things that are going on outside our 50 states that I think are very much warrant leadership and a president speaking out on.
Kevin, I couldn't agree more. I mean, let's start with Gitmo. The president has said he's going to close Guantanamo. These terrorists, they're not combatants like some people say. They are terrorists. They are sworn enemies of the United States. And I am going to do everything I can within my power to ensure that none of them set foot in the United States of America, number one. Number two, when we think about Afghanistan, what is the plan, Mr. President? I don't know. I'm seeing more troops go there, but I haven't seen a clear path, and I know the president's got his hands full in Afghanistan. Iraq seems to be on the upside, but that's a tough situation. We've seen at least a proposed definite date for a withdrawal in Iraq. I think that sends a terrible signal. If we're going to do it, let's do it, but let's not set a date specific. And then the last issue you talked about, the president's willing to give up the missile defense of this country,
right,
in hopes, and I think it's It's a false hope that the Russians are going to help us with negotiations in Iran. Come on. Ahmadinejad, you and I have had this conversation a million times. He's a madman. I wouldn't trust anything he says.
Well, and you add to that, Congressman, since I have no problem with third-party talks, and I'm not so arrogant of an American that I don't believe you can't enlist the help of some people. But at what point do we think we can all of a sudden start trusting Putin again? I mean, this guy, and as much as I respect and appreciate George Bush looked into his eyes and saw something. I don't see it. And I don't trust this guy one iota, and I think he's trying to take us back to KGB times and trying to take us back to a Cold War, which I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I'm not trying to be sensationalistic. I don't trust the guy. So he and Medvedev are basically laughing at America because we reached out for something like we actually needed their help on this, and they laughed at us. Then you look at North Korea. They want to start launching long-range, what they call satellites. We know they're missiles. Iran wants to buy missiles from Russia that are long-range so they can get them to Israel. And where in the world is America on any of this stuff?
Well, I couldn't agree more, my friend. I mean, a lot of people may give President Bush a hard time about certain issues, but I will say one thing. I think history will prove that he stood in the gap in a time, a crucial time in our country where our national defense and our interests were at stake. And I just don't see, and I know we've got problems domestically. I don't disagree with that, but we can't take 10 steps forward and 2 steps back when it comes to our national defense with our international policy. And when you're dealing with countries like North Korea and Iran especially, and now I agree with Russia, you have to negotiate from a position of strength. You can't do it from a position of weakness, Kev.
We're talking with Congressman Gresham Barrett, our 3rd District United States Congressman from South Carolina. All right, let's get to something that hopefully will be a little bit more pleasant for you to deal with. And, of course, you have announced recently that you're running for governor in South Carolina. And I was so glad that when I got the email, I was glad I was sitting down because it came as such a shock that you finally went public with that and you finally decided to make that announcement. I just wasn't prepared for that announcement at all. Anyway, that said, we're going to have a chance next time, maybe during the recess and while you're away and down here in the district. I'd like for you to come in for an hour and let's talk a lot and really break down the reasons you're running for governor and what you want to do. But looking at it from the basics, I mean, fiscally speaking, you are very similar to Mark Sanford in terms of fiscal responsibility and discipline, not wanting spending, and that's good. What about when it comes to a couple things that our listeners consider to be Governor Sanford's weaknesses, job creation, communication with the General Assembly, things like that?
Well, let me say this, and I think nobody will disagree that Mark Sanford believes what he believes. He has been a stalwart conservative when it comes to restructuring, when it comes to being fiscally responsible, and I want to take up those 2 mantles. I mean, he has done a fantastic job, but what I want to do, Kevin, is travel the state and let people see my vision, to see and get to know me and what I want to do for South Carolina. And the first one is economic development. I think you're right. I think you're exactly right. It's all about jobs and bringing economic opportunity, industry, businesses to South Carolina, and that's just not new businesses, but that's existing businesses. Number 2, we can do that through what? Energy. It's right in my wheelhouse with the Savannah River site, with being a nuclear proponent, which I am just, I'm the biggest cheerleader in the world, but I want to see it more than that. I want to see nuclear reactors in South Carolina. We're talking about billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars of economic development in South Carolina. And one of my goals one day, Kev, is not only to have a new nuclear reactor, but have it cooled with salt water that drives the desalination process. So not only do we get power, ample power, we get clean, fresh drinking water for our people. And, of course, the third has to be education, making sure we've got a 21st century educational environment for our children and our children's children where they can thrive, where they can survive, where they can be the workforce for the 21st century.
You got a lot of challenges that you'll have, obviously, your hands full. It's going to be a difficult challenge for whomever gets the job. I look forward to talking to you about that. Let me ask you this. I know you're headed back here to the Palmetto State now. When you get back up to D.C., what is the next big fight? What are you doing next? What's up there?